Now, you guys know I like to build a lot of PCs, especially the ones you see around the channel, but there are some bargains to be had on complete systems on sites like eBay, so I picked up this hunk of junk for £21 and I want to see what it can do. Now, this whole system was £21.56, which comes in at just about $28.46, and well, for the price it doesn't look half bad. Sure, the name was a mess and the case looks absolutely awful, but what's inside is what counts. Internally, we have a Gigabyte AM3 motherboard paired with an Athlon II X2 250, along with 4GB of DDR2 800MHz RAM. Graphics wise, it has an Nvidia Geforce 9500 GT and a 1TB hard drive for storage, which is actually the reason I bought it in the first place, because I actually do need more hard drive space. So first things first, we're going to actually want to clean this all up, and while we do so, let's talk a little bit about the parts that are actually inside this PC. The Athlon II X2 was originally a budget offering, but as besides from the cut down cache, it performed very similar to the Phenom II X2, and well, gamers at the time were very keen on that fact alone. As reviewers originally said, it was perfect for casual computing and even some budget gaming. In fact, they praised it for virtually every aspect, except the final deciding factor: that you could get a quad-core processor with double the performance for £15 more, rendering it obsolete in the market at the time. The Athlon II X2 250 was also praised for its power efficiency and high clock speed of 3 GHz. Sure, it wasn't the best processor on the market, but many recognise it as a cheap alternative to the more expensive dual cores, and after price cuts rendering it a little bit better than the quad cores, it actually had a reason to be purchased. Besides this, you'd have little incentive to purchase it when the quad core was still only £15 more at release, but still it was the first Athlon released onto the AM3 socket that was a dual core. The GPU was pretty well hated, and many reviewers said it was the cutoff point for true gaming cards, and even then reviewers virtually begged buyers to spend a meager £9 more to actually get performance worth buying, with AMD's offering of the HD 4650, which was better in every way. And when the argument of media playback came into it, the budget HD 4350 was definitely a better choice, as it rivaled it in gaming, and even then still cost remarkably less. Although this was released in a time when hype was everything and Blu-ray was this next-gen massive thing, so offering the ability to decode Blu-ray was still actually a selling point. But even then, it offered around 8600 GTS performance for £49, and if you couldn't muster the £58 for the 4650, it could play some games around its release. Moving on to the motherboard, which at first I thought was quite basic, but Gigabyte has always made some great boards, especially in the LGA 775 and early AM3 era, with users on sites like Newegg giving this board in particular glowing reviews thanks to its durability, features and price. In fact, even the ease of use on it was one of the key selling points, as users found it easy to use, as drivers were included and it just generally worked better than the competition, even Asus, who are usually one of the best brands to buy on a budget. So even one user paired it with the Athlon we're using today, so I'm gonna guess the idea of this being paired with this motherboard was probably a common idea. I mean, it's a cheap board, cheap processor and a great setup, especially when the actual Gigabyte board has integrated graphics, which I think is the GeForce 7150 SE, which is definitely not a bad graphics chip if you only want to do some DVD playback and maybe some light retro gaming. And by this point there's not too much else to say. I mean, we've got two 2GB sticks of 800MHz RAM, one of which had a nice Corsair shroud, the other of which was a tad more basic, but for the money I'm not complaining. RAM is RAM at this price, and I'm just lucky that we got some Corsair stuff along with some basic stuff really. And finally we had a 1TB Seagate hard drive, which is pre-installed with Windows 10. And I mean, I'll probably use it in my own PC after we're done with this PC, because it seems rather new, and I've already filled up 3 hard drives with footage, so 1000 extra gigs will be nice anyway. Cleaning wise, the only faults really besides some dust was that the thermal paste on the CPU was completely brittle and dried to pieces, which if you follow me on Twitter you probably will have already noticed. I'm not saying this is an issue, as it was clearly running with the thermal paste like this, as it has got a fresh install of Windows, but it would slow the PC down as the processor thermally throttled. The GPU was a little bit dirty but was actually fine and just needed some new thermal paste. But besides that, the PC looked to be fine, and I didn't even need to take the motherboard or power supply out, as it wasn't worth the hassle of removing all the screws and putting it back. So with nothing much else to say, let's get this all cleaned up and put back together. Now, you guys know I like to build a lot of PCs, especially the ones you see around the channel, but there are some bargains to be had on complete systems on sites like eBay, so I picked up this hunk of junk for £21 and I want to see what it can do. Now, this whole system was £21 and 56p, which comes in at just about $28.46, and well, for the price it doesn't look half bad. Sure, the name was a mess and the case looks absolutely awful, but what? Now, you guys know I like to build a lot of PCs, especially the ones you see around the channel, but there are some bargains to be had on complete systems on sites like eBay, so I picked up this hunk of junk for £21 and I want to see what it can do. Now, this whole system was £21 and 56p, which comes in at just about $28.46, and well, for the price it doesn't look half bad. Sure, the name was a mess and the case to boot, and I know what you're thinking, why not overclock? Well, the power supply unit in this PC is by no means a bad power supply unit, but when it was tested and as soon as there was too much of a power surge, it turned into a time bomb. Still, it's not dangerous with these parts, but seeing what it can do, I'd rather not risk it with an overclock. And booting up to Windows, we have a fully activated copy of Windows 10, which has been preloaded with the latest drivers and some useful programs, apart from a vast antivirus, which just keeps getting in the way and won't uninstall, as most antivirus nowadays are generally more intrusive than the viruses they're meant to protect you from. Yeah, I don't really recommend installing this on your PC. But for general office tasks, I can't fault this at all. It is literally perfect for anyone doing web browsing or general office tasks. YouTube itself was playable in 1080p 30fps or 720p with 60fps. This was all done with the H.264fi extension, which is becoming one of my favourite Chrome add-ons for older computers. So yep, as a PC for £21 you're fully able to use it as a computer. Who would have guessed? And it's not a bad one too, and would probably make the perfect family computer on a budget. As for gaming, well, it surprised me. Nvidia has some pretty decent drivers for the 9500 GT, and with that 1GB of VRAM R1 has, it's not too shabby in those larger games, such as Skyrim, which we're starting with here, which is running in 720p with a mixture of medium and high settings. And well, it looked and ran pretty good with an average of 33fps, even better than the previous console variants of this game. So off to a good start so far. Next off we have Counter-Strike Go in the 720p resolution, which we ran the FPS benchmark for. And well, it ran pretty good with a 63fps average and 1% lows down to 7fps when a lot was going on, as the FPS benchmark is generally a lot more intensive than real gameplay, so you'd likely see that 63fps figure a lot more than you'd see that 7fps figure. Another competitive game up next with Dota 2, which ran fine in low settings with the 720p resolution. I'm not as proficient in this game as I am in other games, but I saw no issues playing the game at all with a 68fps average and the game hardly stuttering at all, which is represented in the 1% and 0.1% lows. As for something in full HD, we have Minecraft running with the fast option selected, as well as a render distance of 7 chunks. And besides the occasional stutter when the game was loading in a large area, there were no issues with this PC running the game in full HD. And seeing as it's a cheap PC, this is a lot better than I would have expected, and a lot better than most PCs in the £20 range can actually muster. In the early access game-wise, we have The Forest in 480p with the ultra-low option selected. And yeah, it wasn't exactly playable, but do keep in mind that a lot of these indie games aren't optimized, and they don't really have the optimizations in drivers either, so they don't really play nicely with this weak hardware. Still, at a push, you could maybe get away with playing it if you're a low-end enthusiast, but really for me 20fps isn't ideal. And finally, what you've all been waiting for is GTA 5 at a playable FPS. I mean, it looks like a PS2 game and it's running in 480p with no shadows, but it does run, and doesn't run badly. A mixture of equally weak components that can power GTA 5 at 33fps is alright in my books, And well, Intel GMA can't really do this, so I'd like to say for £21 we have a PC capable of playing GTA 5. Rounding off with recording, and yet that's doable on this machine. You can probably run your own YouTube channel if you really wanted with the recordings on this PC, even in HD. I mean, we're recording in 720p here, and it's playable, and we got over 60 FPS in game while doing this, so it's definitely feasible to go about things this way. So in the end, is it worth picking up a £20 PC you find on eBay? Well, I see a lot of PCs like this, and in the future I plan to upgrade this PC to see if we can turn this £20 PC into something a tad better. As well, turning a cheap PC like this into something a bit better for gaming is something that anyone can do on the cheap, and can do quickly as well. It's not too difficult. So for £20 I'm not going to argue with its current performance. In fact, I'd actually get away with using this PC because I don't actually do too much in terms of gaming, apart from GTA 5, CSGO and RimWorld, so I'd be fine with using it. But we all know it can do better. So I'll see you guys in another video where I upgrade it, and thank you very much for watching. Good night! So in case I forget to mention this, we do have a Discord which I'm pretty active on, so if you want to talk to me or any of the fans, why not hop on the Discord? There's probably a link down below. And don't forget that I'll be upgrading this PC, so do like and subscribe if you'd like to see some more content like that, and I'll catch you guys in another video.